The Alpha King ordered Bria Fenlow to shut the old wardrobe while the court was still laughing at her coats. They hung behind her in uneven rows, brown wool and gray leather, patched elbows, smoke-dark hems, cuffs resewn with thread too plain for noble eyes. One coat had a wolf-tooth tear at the shoulder. Another carried a child's copper button where a silver clasp should have been. None of them belonged in a Luna ceremony, where beauty mattered almost as much as blood. That was what wardrobe mistress Kaelin Var had said. "They shame the hall," Kellen told the court, her voice soft enough to sound merciful. "Poor things. Bria grows attached to what should be burned." A few noble women laughed behind their white ceremonial furs. Bria stayed on one knee before the wardrobe, needle still caught between her fingers. The thread was dark red, hidden beneath her palm. Protection thread. Protection thread did not wake cloth for beauty. It answered a finished name. A coat with a name sewn fully into its lining could seek the body it had sworn to keep alive. A coat without a finished name, no matter how fine the fur, would remain dead. Her mother had died, keeping that oath. Bria had lived under it. Alpha King Oren Frostmere stood before her beneath the high black rafters of the old pack wardrobe. He wore a perfect royal mantle of black fur, clasped in silver wolf heads, beautiful enough to make every noble in the chamber lower their gaze. But Bria saw what no one else seemed to notice. The fur carried no warmth. It lay on his shoulders like dead winter. Oren's amber eyes narrowed. "You were told to clear this chamber before the Luna court arrived." "I was told to remove what looked poor," Bria said. Kalen's smile sharpened. "And yet she brought more." Bria looked at the mended coats. "They were never meant for ceremony." "Then why are they here?" "Because the lower kennels have no protection cloth. The East Widow's Hall received scraps. The North Patrol returned with 2 winter cloaks for 9 men. Bria lifted her chin. These coats still have names waiting. The room cooled around her words. Kalen gave a small laugh. Servant superstition. The Fenlow women used to whisper names into sleeves and call it sacred duty. Bria's fingers closed around the needle. They called it survival. Oren stepped closer. Men moved when he moved, as if his shadow had command of them too. He was feared for good reason. The Frostmere wolf had broken rival packs, crushed winter raids, and dragged the kingdom through 3 starving seasons. Yet his eyes, fixed on Bria now, held something colder than anger. Weariness, buried deep, gone, before she could understand it. "Close the wardrobe," he said. Bria heard the order strike the oath in her bones. Behind her, the wardrobe stood open. Ancient moon oak doors carved with claw marks no craftsman had ever dared smooth away. It was older than the royal throne, older than the Luna altar. Once, pack law had said winter protection was sacred. No widow, pup, guard, healer, or border wife was to face frost without a coat named for them. Then, Kalen became mistress of the wardrobe. The best cloth vanished first, then the warmth lining. Then the ledger said distribution was complete while families buried their cold. Bria looked at Oren. "Majesty, if I close it now, people will freeze tonight." Kalen's face hardened. "Enough. You accuse the wardrobe office because your ugly work was refused." Bria turned to her. "I accuse the ledger. That silenced the servants first, then the guards." Oren looked at Kalen. Only once, but Kalen felt it. "Majesty, the Luna ceremony requires strength. If rival envoys see the Alpha King surrounded by patched kennel coats, they will smell weakness." Bria looked at the white ceremonial furs on the polished rack. "Thick, bright, useless. Strength that cannot warm the pack is costume," she said. A courtier hissed. "Careful, girl." Bria lowered her eyes, but not her head. "I am being careful. That is why the coats are still here." Oren's gaze dropped to the red thread wrapped around her finger. "What are you sewing into them?" Kalen answered first. "Sentiment." Oren did not look away from Bria. I asked her. The command held the room still. Bria should have lied. She had survived the palace by knowing when truth had no witness. But behind her, the old coats rustled, though no wind entered the chamber. Warmth, she said. Kellen went pale beneath her powder. Bria continued, quieter now. Small charms. Enough to keep breath in a body until morning. That cloth was not yours to charm, Kellen said. It was not yours to strip. The words landed like a dropped blade. Oren's face darkened. Kellen recovered quickly, placing a wounded hand to her chest. Majesty, this is slander from an oath-bound servant who cannot bear to see her work replaced. Bria looked at the floor. For one heartbeat, the shame almost reached her. Not because she had lied, because she had mended through hunger, through candle smoke, through split fingers and winter nights. And the court still saw only ugliness. Oren's voice cut through her thoughts. Close it. Bria turned to the wardrobe. Her hand touched the left door. The moon oak was cold enough to burn. I am sorry, she whispered. She pushed. The door moved an inch, then stopped. A sleeve had caught in the opening. Bria reached to free it. The sleeve pulled away from her hand, by itself. Every torch in the chamber bent toward the wardrobe. The torn brown coat with the wolf tooth mark slid from its hook. No body wore it. No servant touched it. Its empty arms lifted as if someone invisible had stepped inside from the other side of winter. A noblewoman screamed. The coat stepped onto the stone floor. Oren did not move. Kellen did. One step back. The coat dragged one hollow sleeve across the black marble and turned toward the rear of the chamber, where an old border warrior stood shivering in a borrowed guard cloak too thin for his damaged lungs. Josfen. Bria had sewn his name into that lining at midnight. The empty coat walked to him, rose like a loyal wolf, and wrapped itself around his shoulders. Silver warmth burst through every ugly seam. Jos gasped. Not in fear. In breath. Inside the wardrobe, another coat slipped from its hook. Then another. Then 7 more. And the white, ceremonial fur on Oren Frostmere's shoulders remained dead. Oren looked from Josfin's first full breath to the flawless fur lying cold across his own shoulders. For the first time, the Luna ceremony looked less like strength than theft dressed for winter. Josfen took his first full breath in 3 winters. The sound broke out of him raw and startled, as if his own lungs had forgotten what enough air felt like. His bent shoulders rose beneath the torn brown coat. Silver warmth traveled through the wolf-tooth tear, down the patched sleeves, across every crooked seam Bria Fenlow had sewn by candlelight. No one laughed now. The coat held Joss-like arms. Not noble arms, not ceremonial ones. The kind that had carried him through border frost, fever camps, and nights when old warriors were expected to die quietly because the pack had already used their strength. Alpha King Oren Frostmere stared at him, then at Bria, then at the black royal fur lying perfect and cold across his own shoulders. Wardrobe Mistress Kellen Var recovered first. Majesty, she said, sharp beneath the silk of her voice. This is an enchantment. She has staged this to humiliate the Luna ceremony. Bria did not look at her. Her eyes stayed on Josfen until his breathing steadied. Can you stand? She asked. The old warrior nodded once, though tears had gathered in the corners of his eyes. Aye, girl. Then keep the collar closed until the warmth settles, a courtier muttered. She gives orders like a healer. Bria turned then. Because the wardrobe forgot how. Kellen's face tightened. You hear her, Majesty. Insolence dressed as pity. Oren stepped toward the old warrior. Joss tried to bow. The living coat resisted him, pulling gently at his shoulders until he remained upright. That, more than the walking cloth, struck the room. The coat would not let its named body bend too soon. Oren looked at Bria. Why did this coat answer him? No apology. No regret. Only a king demanding the law of a thing he had almost ordered sealed. Bria's expression stayed cold. Because his name was finished. Kalen gave a soft scoff. Servant riddles. Bria lifted the needle still looped with red thread. Protection thread. Answers a completed name. Not rank. Not beauty. Not ceremony. A coat, with a full name sewn into its lining, can seek the body it swore to keep alive. A coat, without a finished name, remains dead. Oren's eyes narrowed. And you sewed his name. At midnight. By whose permission? His lungs. Several servants looked down to hide their faces. Kalen moved toward the white fur rack. Majesty, this is exactly why unlicensed charm work is forbidden. She has placed kennel superstition above royal order. Bria looked at the white mantles. Then royal order should be warmer. Oren turned to the ceremonial rack. 12 white furs hung there, silver-clasped, thick enough to impress envoys. Kalen had arranged them where every noble eye could admire them, while Oren's own black royal mantle lay cold across his shoulders. He reached up and touched its collar, his face changed by almost nothing. Bria saw it anyway. Cold. Whatever winter lived inside, Oren Frostmere had not been eased by that fur. It had never even noticed it. Do the white mantles have names? He asked. Callan answered. They are royal ceremony garments. That was not my question. Her smile thinned. They are assigned by rank. Bria walked to the nearest white mantle and turned the lining outward, before Kalen could stop her. Empty silk. No red thread. No namework. No warmth seam. The fur looked rich on the outside and hollow beneath. A low murmur moved through the servants. Oren's hand closed around his own dead collar. No names. Bria touched the bare lining. No warmth lining either. Kalen's voice cut hard. Rank garments must show strength. Bria looked at Joss Fen, still breathing beneath his ugly coat. Rank cloth does not keep a dying lung alive. The words landed where the white furs could not defend themselves. Oren unclasped the black royal mantle from his own shoulders and tore open the inner seam. Kalen reached for his arm, then thought better of it. Inside the royal fur, beneath the silver classwork, the lining was smooth, cold, and empty. No protection thread, no warmth charm, no finished name. Oren's jaw hardened. Where's the warmth lining? Kalen bowed her head. Ceremonial furs do not require peasant lining. Bria looked at the old wardrobe. More coats had stepped from their hooks now, but they did not rush blindly. They waited at the threshold, sleeves hanging, collars turned toward the chamber as if listening for names only they could hear. They are not peasant coats, Bria said. They are winter vows. Oren looked at the waiting coats. Why have they not all gone out? Because some names are unfinished. Whose? Bria's fingers closed around the red thread until it bit her skin. The people still waiting for protection. Kalen turned to the court. Majesty, she is turning a Luna ceremony into a beggar's roll call. Bria faced her fully. No, I am showing who was left cold so your ceremony could look warm. Oren's eyes moved from the dead royal fur to the old wardrobe, then to the lower storage ledger lying beneath Kalen's key ring. The first living coat beside Joss Fen lifted one sleeve and pointed, not at a person this time, but toward the ledger shelf where winter allotments were recorded. Bria went still. The coats did not explain. They answered finished names. And Joss Fen's coat had just shown where his warmth should have been written. Oren took the lower winter ledger from the shelf. The cover cracked open under his hand. Inside, one line had been scraped pale beneath the ink, warmth lining removed from lower winter coats. Oren looked at the scraped line in the ledger, then at Kalen's keyring. His voice did not soften. Who ordered the lining stripped? Kalen answered before Bria could. Preservation, she said. The word came clean, polished, almost reasonable. Wardrobe mistress Kalen Var stood beneath the hanging white furs with her keyring at her waist and the lower winter ledger open in Alpha King Oren Frostmere's hand. Around them, the old pack wardrobe held its breath through cedar dust, torch smoke, and the silver warmth still glowing from Joss Finn's torn brown coat. Oren did not look at Bria. He looked at Kellen. Who ordered the lining stripped? Kellen folded her hands. Majesty, warmth lining rots when stored in damp lower cloth. It must sometimes be removed, dried, and preserved for ceremonial reserve. That line is not theft. It is maintenance. Bria's mouth tightened. Maintenance. A beautiful word for leaving widows cold. Joss Fenn stood straighter than he had in years, the living coat holding his shoulders as if it remembered how much of him winter had tried to steal. The other coats waited at the wardrobe threshold, empty sleeves hanging low, patient as wolves forbidden to hunt until their names were called. They did not explain. They could not. Protection thread answered finished names. Nothing more. Oren turned the ledger toward Bria. Can you read the seam record? Bria did not step closer at once. He noticed. Good. Let him feel the distance his command had made. You may look, he said. I know I may, Bria replied. The question is whether anyone cared when I did. A few servants lowered their eyes. Oren's jaw tightened, but he did not rebuke her. Bria crossed the ledger. She did not touch Oren's hand. She took the page by the lower corner and turned it toward the torchlight. The scraped line was pale, but not blank. Old ink had sunk too deeply into the paper to vanish. She reached into her sewing pouch and drew out a bone needle, thinner than the one used for protection thread. With the tip, she traced the ledger margin. There, she said. Oren leaned closer. What is it? Transfer mark. Colen's eyes hardened. A storage mark. No. Bria moved the needle to the next column. Storage marks are round. This is cut, angled. It means lining was removed from issued coats before they reached distribution. Colen gave a cool laugh. A servant mender invents codes now? Bria turned away from the ledger and walked to the nearest lower coat, waiting near the wardrobe door. It was a widow's wrap, brown wool patched at the breast, unfinished red thread trailing from the inside collar. She opened the inner seam. The court saw the cut. Not torn by wear, not eaten by moths, sliced cleanly along the warmth channel where lining should have been nested beneath the wool. Bria held the seam open. Moths do not cut straight. No one laughed now either. Oren looked from the sliced seam to Colen. How many? Colen's voice sharpened. Majesty, lower coats were unfit for royal distribution. Many were damaged beyond proper issue. Bria's eyes lifted. A coat too ugly for court can still keep a widow alive. The widow's wrap stirred in her hands. Not walking. Not yet. Its name was unfinished. Bria felt the thread pull against her finger like a pulse cut short. Oren saw the movement. Whose name? Bria closed the seam gently. Maripel. East Widow's Hall. A woman near the servants' wall made a small sound. Kalen turned toward it at once. Silence. Oren's head moved. The servant woman froze. What is your name? He asked. She swallowed. Tilla. Majesty. I keep fires in the East Hall. Does Maripel live? Tilla looked at Bria first. Bria gave nothing away. Yes, Majesty, Tilla whispered. But she has not left her bed since the last frost. Her issued wrap was marked delivered. Bria tapped the ledger. Marked complete. Oren looked down. The line beneath Maripel's entry had been checked in black ink. Winter allotment complete. Bria placed the sliced widow wrap beside the ledger. The lining was removed before this mark was made. Colen stepped forward. Or the coat was removed from distribution and the record was corrected. Then why does it still carry her name thread? The room tightened. Colen's face did not change, but her fingers touched the keys at her waist. Bria saw. So did Oren. He reached toward the keyring. Colen took one step back. Majesty, wardrobe keys are office property. Oren's voice remained flat. So are winter allotments. He held out his hand. For a moment, Colen did not move. That hesitation did more than any confession. At last, she unhooked the key ring and placed it in his palm. Oren passed it to Bria. The court shifted, offended by the sight of an oath-bound mender holding the wardrobe mistress's keys. Bria did not look at them. She chose the narrow iron key marked lower lining reserve and opened the side cabinet beneath the ledger shelf. Inside were empty hooks, not damp cloth, not preserved lining. Empty hooks, dustless where recent bundles had hung. Bria touched one hook, then rubbed her fingers together. Silver lint clung to her skin. Warmth lining, recently removed. Oren took the ledger back and turned 2 pages forward. The allotment was marked complete after the lining reserve was emptied. Kellen's voice stayed controlled. A timing error. Bria looked at the 7 waiting coats. Winter. Does not care what you call the error. The torn coat around Joss Fen lifted its sleeve again, this time toward the ledger date. Oren read it aloud. Lower winter allotment completed, after lining withdrawal. Bria corrected him, cold and precise. After stripping, the scraped line darkened beneath the torchlight, revealing the order hidden under the false maintenance note. Warmth lining removed before winter allotment completed. Bria Fenlow held the silver lint to the torch. It should have burned gold. Warmth lining always did. Even a torn thread, even a scrap pulled from a ruined seam, kept a small memory of the body it had been meant to protect. But the lint on Bria's fingers darkened at the edges and gave off no heat. Her stomach tightened. Alpha King Oren Frostmere saw the change in her face. What is wrong with it? Bria rubbed the ash between her thumb and forefinger. It was cut away from name. Thread. Kalen Var gave a thin sigh. Majesty, she will now claim cloth feels lonely. Bria turned to her. No, I will claim someone cut the oath out. That reached the servants first. A few of them looked toward the waiting coats at the wardrobe threshold. The empty sleeves hung still, not asleep, not dead, listening, but unable to move. Oren followed their gaze. Why did Joss Finn's coat walk, but these wait? Bria walked to the widow's wrap she had opened before. The name thread inside the collar trailed loose where the lining had been sliced. Half a name remained in red stitches. Marape. The rest had been cut away. Bria touched the broken letters. Because her name is not finished anymore. The firekeeper Tilla made a wounded sound from the servant's wall. Kalen's voice sharpened. That coat was unfit for issue. A coat can be patched. Bria lifted the torn collar. A cut name cannot seek its body. Oren's eyes moved to the thread. Can you finish it? Yes. Kalen stepped forward. Not before the Luna ceremony. Bria looked at her. Then the Luna ceremony can wait behind Marapel's lungs. A shocked murmur passed through the court. Oren did not soften. Finish the name. Kalen turned on him. Majesty, if she begins naming every beggar's coat in this chamber, the envoys will arrive to a wardrobe full of kennel grief. Bria threaded her needle. Then they will see the pack honestly. She knelt by the widow's wrap. The work should have taken only seconds, but her fingers ached from cold and sleeplessness. She pulled the red thread through the collar lining, forming the missing letters with small, careful stitches. Marapel. The moment the final stitch closed, the wrap rose in her hands. Not violently, like a woman standing after too long in bed. The collar turned toward the east doors. Tilla covered her mouth. It knows. Bria stood. It knows the name. The widow's wrap moved past the noblewomen, dragging one frayed hem over black marble. No one laughed at its ugliness now. Even the white furs seemed too bright, too clean, too useless. Oren watched the coat leave the chamber. Where will it go? To Marapel. How far? The East Widow's Hall. Kalen's eyes flashed. Majesty, this is dangerous. If old coats begin wandering through the palace, panic will spread before the ceremony. Bria did not look away from the open doors. Panic is not worse than frost. Oren turned to the lower coats. Check another. Bria obeyed the evidence. Not him. She opened a child's winter cape next, then a patrol cloak, then a birthing shawl. Each carried the same wound. Warmth channel sliced open, lining gone. Name, thread cut through the middle. Thumb. Ka. Joss had survived, because his coat had been mended last night. Seramil. Border Patrol. Names broken before the coats could answer. Oren's face darkened with every seam. Kellen clasped her hands at her waist, but her fingers hovered near the place where the keyring had been. Lower garments are frequently altered. Names fade. Servants missew. These are not royal records. Bria lifted the child's cape. This child did not fade. Oren looked at the half-name. Who is Tom? Bria's voice lowered. A kennel boy. 7 winters old. His coat was marked delivered last moon. The royal fur on Oren's arm hung dead over his fist. For one brief instant, his expression shifted not into apology, but into the dangerous awareness of a king, realizing his strength had been decorated with someone else's absence. He turned to Kellen. Where are the cut name? Strips. Kellen's answer came too smooth. Discarded with damaged lining. Bria looked at the empty lower cabinet. Name thread is never discarded by accident. Superstition again. Oath law, Bria said. Older than your office. Oren looked at the cabinet hooks. If the strips were discarded, there should be waste ash. Bria nodded once. There is none. His gaze dropped to the ledger shelf. Then they were kept. Kellen's face cooled. Majesty. I will not have a mender accuse my office because she worships thread. Bria stepped to the back of the cabinet and pressed her palm against the wood. The moon oak was cold, but one narrow panel sat warmer than the rest. Not magic announcing itself. Memory refusing to go numb. There, she said. Oren took the iron key from his hand and opened the hidden panel. Inside lay a flat black drawer, not empty. Bria pulled it out and stopped breathing. Rows of red name thread strips lay coiled inside, cut from linings and sorted by rankless bodies. Widows, kennel children, old patrolmen, lower heelers, border wives, hundreds of unfinished names. The waiting coats at the wardrobe threshold leaned forward without moving their feet. Bria's eyes burned. She did not cry. Not before Kellen. Not before Oren. She laid one severed strip on the ledger, beside the scraped allotment line. Oren read the broken stitches. Marapel. His voice came low. The names were cut out. Bria looked at the silent coats. No, she said. They were stopped from answering. The red strips stirred in the drawer, like wounded things hearing their bodies call from far away. On the inside of the hidden panel, scratched beneath Kellen's office seal, a routing note appeared in pale thread dust, finished names cut from lower coats. Kellen Var smiled at the drawer of severed names, as if it proved Bria guilty. There, she said softly. You all see it now. Bria Fenlow looked up from the red thread strips laid inside the black drawer. Around her, the waiting coats leaned forward from the wardrobe threshold, empty sleeves twitching once. Not enough to move, enough to grieve. The unfinished names inside them had heard their missing halves. Kellen turned toward Alpha King Oren Frostmere. This is why I warned you. Fenlow oath. Work becomes obsession if left unchecked. She cut the names herself, hid them here, then staged the coat's return to shame the ceremony. A murmur broke through the noble side of the chamber. Bria did not flinch. She picked up one severed strip and held it toward the torch. The letters were crooked because she had sewn them at midnight with numb fingers. Marapel, her own work, her own stitches, cut clean through by someone else's blade. Oren looked at her. Could your needle have made that cut? Bria's eyes lifted slowly. My needle mends. That is not an answer. It is the only answer you deserve so far. The chamber tightened. Oren's face hardened, but he did not strike back. His black royal mantle hung over one arm, dead and cold. His other hand still held Kellen's keyring. Kellen seized the moment. Majesty. Listen to her contempt. She admits no authority over her. She has charmed garments without license, disrupted a Luna ceremony, and now refuses to answer plainly. Bria laid Mara's name strip flat on the ledger, then asked the cloth plainly. Kalen laughed. Cloth cannot testify. No, Bria said, but cuts can. She took the bone needle from her pouch and slid its tip beneath the severed edge. A mender's cut frays inward. We cut from the cloth side to save the thread. This was cut from the thread side. She turned the strip. A trimming knife. Narrow. Office steel. Oren looked at Kalen's waist, where the keys had hung moments before. Wardrobe office uses trimming knives. Kalen's eyes cooled. So does every sewing room in the palace. Bria walked to the work table beside the ceremonial rack. Silver scissors lay there. Moon pins. Folded measuring cord. A narrow trimming knife with an ivory handle. She did not touch it. Joss Fen, she said. The old warrior straightened inside his living coat. Aye? Tell him what you see on the blade. Joss crossed the chamber slowly. The coat kept him steady, refusing to let the cold reclaim his breath. He bent over the knife without lifting it. Red lint, he said. Callan snapped. From her sleeve. Bria held up her palms. No red lint clung there. Only old needle marks and one line of blood where protection thread had bitten her finger. Oren took a cloth from a guard and lifted the trimming knife himself. At the base of the blade, caught beneath the ivory handle, was a curl of dark red thread. Not loose. Wedged. Kalen's voice remained controlled. A shared tool. Bria looked at the hidden drawer. Then why were the strips sorted? Oren turned back to the drawer. That was when he saw what grief had almost hidden. The severed names were not thrown in randomly. They lay in rows, bundled with thin white tags. Widow Hall. Kennel Children. Old Patrol. Lower Healers. Border Wives. And one tag repeated too often. Ceremonial Reserve. Oren lifted it. Kalen moved. Majesty. That tag refers to storage only. His eyes stayed on the writing. Storage for what? For future repair. Bria's laugh was quiet, bitter, and tired. You do not repair a widow's winter wrap by removing her name and filing it under ceremony. Oren looked at the lower ledger again. Where is the matching transfer page? Kalen's mouth tightened. If it exists, it would be in the wardrobe office. Bria pointed to the side cabinet. No. Transfer tags stay with the cut cloth until inspection. Oren handed her the key ring. The noble court shifted again. Offended for the second time by keys in a mender's hand, Bria chose a square brass key marked Reserve Intake. It turned hard in the lock, as if the cabinet had not expected honesty. Inside lay a narrow stack of intake slips. She pulled the top one free, then another, then 6 more. All bore the same sequence. Name thread removed. Warmth lining removed. Lower coat marked unsuitable. Material transferred to ceremonial reserve. Winter allotment marked complete. Oren read the first slip without speaking, then the second. By the third, the air around him had become dangerously still. Bria watched him, but felt no relief. A king becoming angry after proof was not the same as a king having listened before harm. Kalen's voice sharpened. Lower coats were unsuitable for royal distribution. Their components were preserved to prevent waste. Bria picked up Maripel's strip. This is not a component. She stepped to the waiting widow's wrap and held the severed name near the broken collar. The coat shuddered once, but could not rise again. The name was not sewn, not finished, not home. Bria's throat burned. She forced the feeling down. A name is not scrap, she said. Oren looked at Kalen. Who approved the transfer? Kalen lifted her chin. Wardrobe office approves internal preservation. That was not my question. Her silence lasted too long. At the back of the chamber, one of the living coats around Joss Finn lifted its sleeve again, pointing not to Kalen now, but to the bottom of the intake slips. Oren turned the page. A small office seal sat beneath every transfer. C. V. Colin Navarre. Bria looked at the seal, then at the dead white furs arranged for noble admiration. Not theft yet, Colin said, as if correcting the room before it could accuse her. Preservation. Bria's eyes did not leave the tags. No, she said. Preparation. Oren read the transfer chain aloud, each word colder than the last. Name. Thread strips transferred to ceremonial reserve before coats were delivered. The intake slip blackened along the margin, revealing a buried line beneath the white tag. Name thread strips transferred before winter coats were marked complete. Colin Var reached for the intake slips, as if paper could be rescued from truth. Oren Frostmere closed his hand over them first, not gently. The thin pages bent under his fingers, but did not tear. His eyes stayed on the small seal at the bottom of every transfer. Seven, Wardrobe Mistress Authority. Colin drew herself taller. Majesty, if my office had not preserved usable material, the Luna ceremony would have opened with moth-eaten shame. I protected the dignity of your court. Bria Fenlow looked at the white furs gleaming on their polished rack. Then, let the dignity be opened. Colin's face sharpened. No. The word came too fast. Oren turned toward her. No? The ceremonial mantles are consecrated for the Luna procession. They cannot be cut apart because a mender wants revenge. Bria stepped toward the rack. I do not need to cut them apart. Colin moved to block her. You will not touch them. Bria stopped before touching cloth. Her gaze went to Oren's hand, still holding the key ring. Then have him do it. Oren's expression did not soften at being used as a tool. Good. Bria had no interest in making him comfortable. He walked to the first white mantle and lifted the edge of its inner hem. The outside was flawless. White fur brushed clean, silver clasps shaped like crescent moons, shoulder fall wide enough to make any noblewoman look born for winter. But inside, beneath the silk, the seam puckered where another lining had been hidden. Bria pointed. There. Oren looked closer. A second seam. Not royal work. Colin's voice cooled. Ceremonial reinforcement. Bria looked at her. Reinforcement does not carry old smoke. Oren brought the lining toward the torch. A faint gray stain crossed the inner fold, nearly invisible beneath the white silk. Smoke mark. Kennel hearth. Lower hall ash. The kind of mark that never touched noble wardrobes unless it had first lived against a poorer body. Oren's jaw tightened. This lining came from lower coats. Colin answered smoothly. Recovered material. Cleaned and elevated. Bria's mouth twisted. Stolen and silenced. A noblewoman gasped. That fur was assigned to Lady Soren. Colin turned sharply. Silence. Oren did not look away from the hidden seam. Open another. Bria lifted a hand before he moved. Not all. One by one. He looked at her. She met his eyes. Names were cut from bodies already. Do not turn their proof into another display. For a breath, the king said nothing. Then, he nodded once. Choose one. Bria chose the mantle with silver beadwork along the collar. Not because it was richest, but because its inner seam pulled strangely near the heart. She had seen that pull before on a child's winter cape, when warmth lining had been stretched too thin. Oren turned the lining outward. A strip of brown wool showed beneath the silk. Someone had shaved it clean, bleached it, pressed it flat, and buried it where no one at ceremony would see the old cloth under the new shine. Bria touched the edge. The cloth gave no heat. Of course it did not. It was separated from the name, she said. Colin folded her hands. Names are servant marks. They have no place in noble attire. Bria looked at the mantle. Then the warmth has no reason to live. Josvin's coat stirred beside him, sleeve lifting slightly toward the white rack. It did not walk. It did not accuse. It only recognized the cloth that had once belonged to lower winter. Oren saw the movement. Can the lining remember whose coat it came from? Bria shook her head. Not without the finished name. Kalen seized on that. Then there is no proof. Bria turned to the drawer of severed red strips. There is always proof when someone cuts carefully. She chose a strip from the row, marked kennel children, and held it near the exposed lining. Nothing happened. Wrong name. She chose another. Nothing. Another. The court watched the failed matches with growing discomfort. Kalen's confidence began to return by degrees. Then Bria lifted a small torn strip. The letters nearly split through the middle. Tom Mei Kei. The hidden brown lining inside the white mantle twitched. A servant woman sobbed once behind her hand. Bria closed her eyes for half a breath, then opened them. Tom Kale, she said. The lining warmed faintly under her fingers. Not enough to rise. Not enough to seek him. Only enough to answer the sound of what had been stolen from it. Oren looked toward the servants. Where is Tom Kale? No one answered. That silence was not ignorance. It was fear. Bria spoke without looking away from the mantle. Lower kennels, 7 winters old. Fever after the last frost. Oren turned to Kalen. A child's lining was sewn into a noble ceremonial mantle. Kalen's mask held. Unassigned material was repurposed. Bria's voice went quiet. It had half his name still bleeding from it. Kalen's eyes flashed. Because you put names everywhere like curses. No, Bria said. Because someone knew names were the only part that could call the cloth home. Oren looked at the exposed seam, then at the strip in Bria's hand. Finish it. Kalen stepped forward. Majesty, do not allow her to bind noble ceremony to kennel blood. Bria did not move. Tom is not blood to be hidden under a fur. Oren's voice stayed hard. Finish the name. Bria threaded the needle with red protection thread. Her hand trembled once. Not from fear of Kalen. From knowing a child might be cold while his coat slept under a noble mantle. She stitched the missing letters into the severed strip first, then pressed it against the brown lining hidden inside the white fur. Tumkal. The mantle jerked out of Oren's hands. Noblewomen screamed and scattered. The white ceremonial fur collapsed to the floor. Not like a dead animal now, but like something ashamed of the shape it had been forced to wear. The hidden brown lining tore free from the silk and crawled toward the door, dragging the noble fur behind it like shed skin. Bria did not smile. Oren watched the lining pull away from ceremony and toward the lower kennels. His voice came low. How many ceremonial furs carry lower lining? Kalen looked at the rack. Too late. Bria saw the answer in her eyes before any coat moved. The white mantles shivered in their places, every hidden seam waking under the sound of finished names waiting somewhere in the cold. A tag slipped from the inner hem of the fallen mantle. Oren picked it up. Ceremonial reserve lining source. Lower kennel issue. On the back, beneath Kalen's office seal, another line appeared where the ink had been scraped thin. Lower warmth lining sewn into noble ceremonial furs. The fallen white mantle dragged itself toward the kennel doors. Not gracefully. It lurched over the marble like a wounded animal, trying to crawl out of borrowed skin. The brown warmth lining inside it pulled forward inch by inch, answering the finished name Bria Fenlow had restored with red thread. Tom Kal. The noble fur tangled behind it, silver beads scraping across the floor. A lady screamed as the mantle brushed her slippers. Stop it! Bria did not move. Kalen Var did. She stepped in front of the crawling fur and raised one hand, as if command alone could shame cloth back into obedience. Enough. The lining did not stop. It dragged itself around her. A few servants covered their mouths. Alpha King Oren Frostmere watched the thing cross the chamber, his face cut from winter stone. His black royal mantle remained over one arm, torn open at the seam, dead fur falling heavily from his fist. Let it pass, he said. Kalen turned sharply. Majesty, if that mantle reaches the lower kennels before the Luna ceremony, every corridor will know the royal wardrobe has been violated. Bria looked at her. The lower kennels were violated first. Kalen's eyes flashed. You have made your point, Mender. No, Bria said. Tom's coat has. The crawling mantle reached the doors. 2 guards looked to Oren. He gave a short nod. They opened the way, and the fur disappeared into the corridor, dragging warmth back toward the child it had been stolen from. The chamber seemed colder after it left, not because warmth had gone, because everyone understood where it had been. Kalen recovered with the speed of a woman who had survived many near exposures. She turned to the court, not to Bria. Majesty. Whatever irregularities occurred in lower distribution, the ceremony cannot be abandoned. Rival envoys are already entering the outer hall. Your royal mantle is damaged. The white furs have been disturbed. Order her to repair the king's garment first. Bria's hand stilled on the needle. There it was. The old shape of the world, trying to put itself back together. Poor body's cold. Royal image first. Oren looked at Bria. Can my mantle be warmed? A softer woman might have heard hope in the question. Bria heard command waiting behind it. Perhaps, she said. Kalen seized on the word. Then she must do it now. Bria met Oren's chaza. No. The word hit harder than an insult. A court lord stepped forward. You deny your Alpha King? I deny the order of harm, Bria said. Oren's eyes narrowed. Good. Let him feel it. Kalen's voice sharpened. Majesty. She admits she can warm royal fur and refuses. That is treason by omission. Bria picked up the drawer of severed name thread strips and set it on the crescent work table. A widow's wrap waits unfinished. 3 kennel capes wait unfinished. A patrol cloak waits unfinished. A birthing shawl waits unfinished. She pointed the needle toward Oren's black mantle. Your fur can wait behind the people whose lining dressed your court. Several nobles recoiled. Oren did not. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed low. You would leave your king cold. Bria's answer came without ornament. You left them freezing. The words entered him, not as accusation alone, as fact. For one moment, the black fur in his hand sagged, and something beneath his skin shuddered. Not human. Not entirely. The torchlight caught his eyes, and found wolf gold buried under frost. Bria saw his fingers stiffen around the dead mantle. Pain crossed his face so quickly most would have missed it. Kalen did not. Her expression changed, not with concern, with calculation. Majesty, she said softly, your wolf cannot endure a public chill before rival envoys. Let her mend you. The lower garments can be handled after the Luna procession. Bria looked at Oren more carefully now. His royal mantle was not merely cold. It was failing him. No wonder he wore winter-like armor. No wonder his court feared weakness. The Frostmere wolf inside him was freezing slowly, and everyone around him had dressed the wound instead of warming it. Oren saw her understanding and hated it. Do not look at me with pity, he said. I am not, Bria replied. I am looking at the next body. Kalen dressed without warmth. Kalen's mouth hardened. Careful. Bria reached for Oren's mantle. He did not give it to her immediately. That, too, told her something. A man could command armies and still fear what a seam might reveal. At last, he placed the black fur on the table. Bria opened the torn lining. The royal cloth was finer than anything in the lower wardrobe. Black frostwolf fur, silver backing, moon silk reinforcement, beautiful work, expensive work, dead work. She searched the inner collar. No red thread, not even a cut remnant. No name, she said. Oren's face did not change. Royal mantles are not named. Then, they cannot answer. They are not meant to walk. They are meant to keep you alive. Kalen cut in. Royal protection is carried by blood, not servant thread. Bria pressed 2 fingers against the inner seam. Cold struck her skin so sharply she nearly pulled back. Oren noticed. What is it? Bria held the seam open toward the torch. Beneath the black fur, where warmth lining should have rested, someone had sewn silver ceremonial, backing directly against frostwolf hide. No channel for heat. No oath space. No name work. Nothing a living body could call. This mantle was made to look strong, Bria said. Not to warm anything inside it, Kalen answered quickly. The king's mantle is ceremonial authority. It must not be treated like kennel cloth. Bria looked at the royal fur, then at Joss Fen breathing behind her in his patched coat. Then authority is colder than kennel cloth. A guard sucked in breath. Oren's eyes locked on hers. For a dangerous second, the king and the mender stood on opposite sides of the same dead fur, both too proud to retreat, and both beginning to understand that pride had never warmed anyone. Oren spoke first. If you do not mend mine now, what will you mend? Bria picked up Maripel's unfinished name strip. The next finished name. Kalen laughed in disbelief. You would make the Alpha King wait for a widow? Bria threaded the needle. No, she said. I would make the wardrobe. Remember what it was built for. The waiting coats at the threshold stirred. Not rushing, not explaining, only turning their collars toward the drawer of severed names. Oren looked from the dead royal mantle to Bria's needle. His voice remained hard. Begin. Bria did not thank him. She bent over the widow's strip and started sewing. Behind her, Kalen's keys began to frost over on the table, and the black royal mantle gave off a thin white breath, as if the dying wolf inside Oren Frostmere had heard warmth choose someone else first. The first stitch into Maripel's name made the wardrobe doors creak wider, not with thunder, with memory. Bria Fenlow kept her head bent over the severed strip, needle flashing red through the dim chamber light. Every noble eye watched her hands as if they were committing treason. Perhaps they were. Treason against ceremony, against rank, against the polished lie that a kingdom could look warm while its lower halls froze. Maripel. The final letter closed beneath her thumb. The widow's wrap rose from the floor. Tilla, the East Hall firekeeper, began to cry before it even moved. She is alive, she whispered. Mara is still alive. Bria tied off the thread. Then let the coat find her. The wrap turned toward the east corridor. Its patched hem dragged once over the marble, then lifted, as if age itself had become too light to carry. It moved past Oren Frostmere's dead black mantle without bowing to it. Kalenvar's keys frosted harder on the work table. She saw it and placed one hand over them. Majesty, stop this now. If old widow garments begin roaming the palace before foreign envoys arrive, Frostmere authority will be mocked across every rival pack. Oren's gaze followed Mara's wrap until the guards opened the door and let it pass. Then he looked at Kalen. Frostmere authority was already mocked when its wardrobe dressed children's warmth as court beauty. Kalen's face went white with anger. You would place kennel cloth above the Luna ceremony? Bria reached for the next severed strip. No. He would place lungs above velvet. Oren looked at her. She did not soften the words for him. Good kings did not need gentleness before truth. Failed ones had already had too much of it. The next strip was small. Too small. Tomkale had been finished, but there were 3 more from the lower kennels. Lysa Reed, Oren Bell, Tam Marrow. Children's names, uneven from Bria's hurried midnight stitches. She sewed them one by one, while the court watched time bleed out of the ceremony. Outside the chamber, horns sounded once. The Luna envoys had arrived. Kalen seized the sound like a weapon. Majesty. The procession. Oren did not move. A child's cape lifted from the wardrobe floor the moment Bria completed Lysa Reed. It shook itself once, patched hood turning toward the lower stair. The second cape followed. Then the third. They did not explain. They did not accuse. They simply went where finished names called them. That was worse for Kalen than any speech. A court lord stepped forward, voice tight. Majesty, the envoys will think the palace has lost control of its own garments. Oren's amber eyes flashed. Then they will learn the garments kept faith better than the palace. Bria's needle paused, only for a breath. Not gratitude, recognition that the king had finally said something costly while the room could hear it. Kalen heard the cost too. Her voice changed. Lower now, more dangerous. And when rival packs smell weakness, when they learn Frostmere children freeze in lower halls, when they decide your throne cannot clothe its own blood. Oren's hand tightened around the dead royal mantle. A line of frost climbed the black fur from his fingers. Bria saw his pain sharpen. The dying wolf inside him did not like delay. It wanted warmth. It wanted the mantle fixed. It wanted, perhaps, to live. Still, Oren looked at the severed strips waiting under Bria's hand. "Continue," he said. Kalen turned on him. "Majesty," he cut her off. "The Luna ceremony waits." The chamber changed. Not with noise, with alignment. Servants who had spent years carrying coats, sweeping ash, and lowering their eyes looked up. Guards shifted their stances. Noble women clutched their white furs closer, suddenly aware those furs might not belong wholly to them. Bria did not thank him. Instead, she took up the patrol strip. Joss had already been restored, but 3 more patrol cloaks bore cuts where warmth lining had been stripped before issue. Bria matched red strips to broken collars by stitch shape, by old smoke, by the tiny habits of her own hands. One name had been cut through the middle of a prayer knot, another through a winter breath charm. Another had only the last letters left. Finn. Joss Fenn saw it first. "That is Harlan Fenn, my brother's boy." Bria's mouth tightened. He was marked issued. Returned, frostbitten. Oren looked at Kaylin. She lifted her chin. Border Patrol damages garments faster than the office can replace them. Bria pushed the completed strip through the cloak lining. Replacement was never the problem. Removal was. The cloak rose when the name finished. Then another. Then another. By the time the 3rd patrol cloak left the chamber, the white ceremonial rack looked thinner, though no one had yet cut another mantle. The court had begun to understand that beauty itself might be carrying theft under its shine. Kalen stepped toward the work table. "Enough. The wardrobe cannot empty before royal inspection." Bria looked at the strips still waiting. "It is not emptying." She lifted a half-sewn name. "It is returning." Oren's black mantle exhaled again, thin white frost curling over the table. His hand jerked once, not from fear, but pain. Bria saw the wolf shadow under his skin press against his human form. Kalen saw it too. "Majesty," she whispered. "If you weaken now, they will all see." Oren looked at Bria's needle, then at the coats leaving by name, then at the open doors where the sound of envoys gathered beyond the hall. "They should," he said. The words were rough, not romantic, not soft, but they made Kalen take one step back. Oren turned toward the chamber doors and raised his voice for the waiting court outside. "The Luna ceremony is delayed by royal order. No noble fur enters procession until every lower winter name in this wardrobe is restored." Bria's fingers tightened around the needle. The old moon oak wardrobe answered with a deep crack from inside its frame. A hidden panel above the lower rack slid open, revealing another row of severed red name strips. Not dozens, hundreds. And at the top of the bundle, tied in black thread instead of red, lay a strip Bria had never sewn. Oren Frostmere. Oren Frostmere picked up the black-tied strip before anyone else dared reach for it. His name lay in thread across the torn cloth. Oren Frostmere. Not silver, not royal blue, not the gold thread used on banners, treaties, and victory cloaks. The letters had been sewn in dark red protection thread, then bound with black to stop the warmth from answering. Bria Fenlow stared at the stitches. They were not hers. Older hand. Firmer knots. A left slanted loop on the R that made her chest tighten before memory could form a name. Her mother's work. Oren saw her face change. "You know this thread." Bria did not answer quickly. She reached toward the strip, then stopped before touching it. It was sewn by a Fenlow woman. Kalenvar's laugh came too sharp. How convenient. Bria looked at her. Not convenient. Old. Oren held the strip toward the torch. The black binding around it drank light instead of reflecting it. The letters underneath strained faintly. Not glowing, not waking. Only trying to remember the body they had once sworn to warm. His fingers tightened. The black royal mantle on the table exhaled another thread of frost. Several nobles stepped back. Kalen moved closer to Oren, lowering her voice. Majesty, that strip is beneath your dignity. Royal names are not sewn into servant cloth. Oren's eyes stayed on the thread. Then why is mine here? Kalen did not miss a beat. Old wardrobe relics. Your childhood garments were cleared after coronation. Some sentimental scrap must have remained. Bria's voice cut through the lie. Royal childhood garments are kept in the upper cedar vault, not hidden behind lower winter strips. Oren looked at her. She forced herself to continue. Black binding is not storage. It is suppression. The word changed his posture. Not much. Enough. What does it suppress? Bria looked at the black thread wrapped around his name. Answering. Oren's jaw flexed. Explain. She hated that he could still command answers after nearly sealing the wardrobe. Hated more that the answer mattered. A finished name calls warmth to the body it protects, she said. If the name is bound in black, the oath cannot complete. The coat will not seek you. The warmth will not know where to go. Kalen spoke quickly. Majesty, this is forbidden mender doctrine, not law. Bria turned to the open wardrobe. Then why is his mantle dead? The question reached what Kalen had tried to hide behind ceremony. Oren's black mantle lay open on the table, flawless outside, hollow inside. Frost crept from the torn seam, feathering across the wood. The cold did not belong to the chamber. It came from the fur itself, or from him. Joss Fen, still wrapped in his living coat, looked at the king with sudden understanding. Old warriors knew the smell of a dying wolf better than courtiers knew perfume. Oren saw Joss see. His face hardened. Do not, he said. Bria understood then. The court did not know. They saw a feared Alpha King, winter-blooded, undefeated, harsh enough to keep rivals obedient. They did not know his wolf was freezing beneath that black fur. They did not know the royal mantle was not ornament but cover. They did not know he had been standing in a dying cold while ordering warmth away from others. Kalen knew. That was in her eyes. Oren turned to her. How long has this been in your custody? Kalen's expression gentled, as if she were grieving for him. Majesty, I protected you. If the court knew your wolf required servant thread, every rival Alpha would challenge your blood. Bria's hand curled around her needle. There it was. Not confession. Justification. Always cleaner. Always more dangerous. Oren's voice did not soften. How long? Kalen looked at the strip. Since your first winter fever. A quiet shock moved through the chamber. Bria looked down at her mother's stitches. She remembered the story in pieces. A royal child nearly lost to frost fever, a Fenlow mender summoned secretly, a small black coat sewn through 3 nights, while palace healers prayed too loudly and helped too little. Her mother had never named the child. Now the thread did. Oren's eyes had gone wolf gold. My father said the fever left weakness in my blood. Kalen lowered her head. Your father understood symbols. A king cannot be known to survive by lower oath work, so we cut it out. No, Bria said. Oren looked at her. She lifted the strip by the edge. The name was not merely cut out. It was kept. Bound. If it had only been removed, the oath would die clean. This was held half alive. For what purpose? Oren asked. Bria looked at Kalen's frosted keys. Leverage. Kalen's face sharpened. Careful, mender. Bria stepped closer to the black mantle. Your wolf has been calling warmth it cannot reach. That is why no royal fur answers. That is why the ceremonial mantle stays dead. His name was finished once, but someone kept the answer locked away. Oren stared at the strip, as if it were both wound and memory. Then frost broke across his wrist, not from the room, from beneath his skin. His wolf shadow rose behind him, faint and enormous, shaped like a black winter wolf with ribs rimmed in white ice. Courtiers stumbled backward. One noblewoman dropped her white fur and did not pick it up. Kalen whispered, "Majesty, control it." Bria looked at the shadow, then at him. "Do not make it kneel." Oren's eyes snapped to hers. She did not lower her gaze. "It has been cold long enough." The wolf shadow shuddered. For the first time, the court saw the Alpha King not as untouchable strength, but as a body too proud and too used to cold. Kalen seized the panic. "This is what she wants. She exposes your weakness before envoys, before rivals, before the Luna court. Let me bind the strip again. Let the ceremony continue. I preserved your throne." Oren held the black-tied name in one hand and the dead royal mantle in the other. His voice came rough. "You preserved my silence." Bria threaded her needle with red protection thread. Kalen's eyes widened. "You cannot sew a royal name without command." Bria looked at Oren, not pleading, not offering comfort. "Your command is not enough," she said. "A name, thread answers a body, not a crown. Do you want it finished?" The question made the whole chamber feel smaller. Oren Frostmere, Alpha King, feared ruler, winter-wounded wolf, looked at the old thread with his name trapped beneath black binding. "Yes," he said. Bria cut the black thread. The royal mantle on the table convulsed once. Inside the hidden panel, every remaining severed name strip stirred toward its unfinished body, and Oren's wolf shadow lowered its frozen head, not to the court, not to the crown, but toward Bria's needle. Bria Fenlow did not sew the king's name first. Oren Frostmere had said yes. The black binding had fallen from his name thread. His wolf shadow bowed its frozen head toward her needle, and half the court had stared as if a mender had suddenly become more dangerous than any rival alpha waiting beyond the palace doors. Still, Bria turned away from the royal mantle and reached for the drawer of lower names. Kalenvar's voice cut through the chamber. "You dare make him wait?" Bria chose the next severed strip. Sierra Mill, lower healer, winter cough ward. He has survived this long. Oren's jaw tightened. Pain moved under his skin in a pale line of frost. But he did not stop her. Bria looked at him once. "If I mend you before them, the wardrobe learns the same law that broke it." The king's eyes held hers. Then he stepped back, finished the lower names. The words moved through the old pack wardrobe like a door opening from the inside. Servants brought coats to Bria one by one, not in panic now, in order. Widow wraps, kennel capes, patrol cloaks, healer shawls, border wife storm coats. Each garment showed the same crime. Warmth lining stripped, name, thread cut, delivery marked complete. Bria matched each severed strip by stitch, smoke, cloth memory, and the small habits of her own hands. She did not let the coats explain. They were not judges. They were vows. When a name was finished, the coat rose and left for the body it had promised to keep alive. Some moved quickly, sleeves snapping like wolves scenting home. Some limped across the marble as if age had settled into the wool itself. One tiny child's cape hesitated at the door until Josven bent, touched its hood, and whispered, "Lower kennels, little one. Go." It went. Outside, the Luna horns sounded again, unanswered. Kalen stood rigid near the ceremonial rack, her face pale with rage. "Every moment you delay weakens Frostmere rule." Oren looked at the disappearing coats. "Then Frostmere rule was weaker than I knew." A court lord protested. "Majesty, the envoys will wait," Oren said, "or leave colder than they arrived." Bria finished the last widow name before she touched the royal strip. "Ma rappel." Tom Kale, Harlan Fen, Sera Mill, Lysarid, Orin Bell, Tilla Varn. Names that would never have entered a royal ceremony now crossed the floor wrapped in silver warmth. Only then did Bria lift Oren's name thread. The black binding had left marks across it, like bruises on cloth. Her mother's old stitches still held. Bria touched the slanted loop in Frostmere and swallowed the ache that rose behind her ribs. "My mother saved you," she said. Oren's expression changed, not into softness, into impact. "I did not know." "No?" Bria said. "But someone did." She looked at Kalen. Kalen lifted her chin. "The old king ordered all lower oathwork removed from royal garments. I obeyed the throne." Oren's wolf shadow stirred behind him, ribs still rimmed with ice. "And kept my name bound after my father died?" Kalen's mouth tightened. "I kept the kingdom from seeing weakness. You kept me cold. I kept you feared." Bria threaded her needle. "Fear is cheaper than warmth. That is why people like you choose it." Kalen turned on her. "You know nothing of ruling. I know what bodies need when winter comes." Oren looked from Kalen to the empty lower racks, to the dead white furs, to the coats still moving through the palace corridors by finished names. So should a king. Bria placed Oren's name thread inside the black royal mantle. She did not sew it into the outer fur where nobles could admire it. She opened the inner heart seam, where warmth had to live unseen to matter. The first stitch resisted. Royal cloth had been made to display power, not accept care. Bria pushed the needle through. Oren inhaled sharply. The wolf shadow behind him shuddered. Kalen took one desperate step forward. "Stop. If that mantle answers her thread, every rival will know your blood needed a servant's oath." Oren did not look at her. "Let them know I lived because someone lower than my throne kept faith better than my court." Bria's hand paused. That was not apology. It was public truth. Better than the wrong softness. She finished the final stitch. Oren Frostmere. The black mantle rose from the table. It did not leap to him like a pet. It did not crown him. It lifted slowly, heavily, as if thawing from years of forced silence. Then it crossed the space between king and mender and settled over Oren's shoulders. Warmth moved through the fur, not bright, deep, the kind of heat that reaches bone before skin. Oren bowed his head, and the frozen wolf shadow behind him drew one full breath. Ice cracked along its ribs. Black fur filled the gaps where frost had been. It did not kneel to Bria. It stood beside Oren and lowered its head in recognition of a debt. Kalen saw the court see it. Her power broke there, not because she had been shouted down, but because the thing she called weakness had kept the Alpha King alive. Oren turned to the guards. "Wardrobe Mistress Kalen Var is removed from custody of all winter cloth, keys, ledgers, and ceremonial reserves. She will answer under witness for stripped lining, severed names, false allotments, and suppression of royal protection thread." Kalen's face hardened into hatred. "The poor will empty your stores within a season." Bria closed her sewing pouch. "No, the cold emptied them first." Oren took Kalen's key ring and placed it on the crescent work table before Bria. "The old pack wardrobe will be reviewed by named need, not rank display. Protection cloth is sacred duty, not charity. No coat may be marked complete until its name, thread, warmth, lining, and body are witnessed together." The scribe near the door began writing with shaking hands. Bria did not touch the keys. Oren noticed. "You do not want them? I want the law to change, so no woman has to steal time by candlelight to do what the pack owed in daylight." He accepted that without defense. "Then write that too," he told the scribe. The Luna ceremony did not begin under white fur. It began hours later, after the lower kennels had stopped shivering, after Maripel stood from her bed wrapped in a patched brown coat, after Tom Cale's fever broke beneath a cape ugly enough to save him. When the envoys entered the great hall, they found no polished display of untouched strength. They found an Alpha King wearing a mended black mantle with red name thread hidden at the heart seam. They found Bria Fenlow standing beside the old pack wardrobe, not kneeling, not crowned, not claimed, recognized. Oren came to her after the final winter name was recorded. He stopped at a respectful distance, as if he had finally understood that warmth could not be commanded closer. "I ordered you to close it," he said. "Yes, I was wrong. Yes." A faint breath, almost a laugh, left him. "You do not spare me much." Bria looked at the wardrobe, now open and alive, with waiting cloth instead of shame. Winter never spared them. His gaze lowered. "Will you mend beside me when the law is read?" She looked at his mantle, then at the heart seam where her mother's old work lived again. "Beside," she said. "Not beneath." Oren bowed his head once. "Beside." Outside, across the palace roads, old coats moved through falling snow like loyal wolves returning home. The old pack wardrobes stayed open, and for the first time in generations, the kingdom learned that beauty did not make cloth sacred. A finished name did.